listening to TerraForte on KUPS 90.1 FM Tacoma. I'm Bryce Silver-Bates.
I'm Connor Wilson.
Each week on our show, we bring you the sounds of rare and unique instruments from around the globe.
This week, we'll be looking at instruments that were invented in relatively recent history. Some of the instruments we'll be talking about are so rare that only one exists in the world.
I'll be talking about the Bazantar, a modified stand-up bass with 38 strings inspired by the sitar, the glass harmonica, a fascinating instrument invented by Benjamin Franklin.
And I'll be talking about Torre, a unique code zither, the Yaybahar,
We hope you enjoy this week's episode of TerraForte. What you're hearing right now is, believe it or not, just a single instrument, the Bazantar, developed and built by Mark Deutsch in the early 1990s. The Bazantar is essentially a modified stand-up bass, but with 5 melody strings, 29 sympathetic harmony strings, and 4 drone strings, for a total of 38 strings. Instead of telling you about his process of creating the instrument, I'll let the inventor himself describe it.
The Bazantar is a bass, but it has sympathetic strings like the sitar has, which is an Indian instrument. It has a special kind of sympathetic strings that they're like. And those are the strings that you don't play, but resonate to what you play. So if I play this note, you hear that resonance that's coming after it? Well, if I play this note, which doesn't have a sympathetic tune to it, you don't hear any resonance.
Right.
So this instrument is a bass, but it has sympathetic strings and it also has drone strings on it. How it came about is that I was studying the sitar, and my teacher was expressing the difficulty of a Western mind to hear the subtle, sacred, geometrical vibrations that are found in Indian music, and actually found in Chinese and African music also, but it's highly evolved in Indian music.
Right.
And he said, you know, a Western person, after listening to the Western system, which is a tempered synthetic system, he said it would take many years. And I didn't want it to take many years. So I did 2 things, and one of them was I figured out the math of the ratios, the vibrations. And that was an intellectual process. But I also wanted to collapse it from the intuitive and the unconscious. So I played Indian music, and specifically music of the sarangi, which is this indigenous bowed Indian instrument that it's only about this tall, but it has 42 strings total, so a lot of sympathetics. And it's bowed, and it's beautiful, and it's hauntingly beautiful. And so I would play that in my sleep. And so I was doing this for weeks, and one night I was dreaming, and I mean, I knew this music really well. I could get my CD player to autoplay, so it would play all night long. And so I was dreaming, and in my dream I was playing the bass, because I was a bassist, and but this music had all these sympathetics, and so my bass had sympathetic strings on it in my dream, because you can do whatever you want in your dreams.
Right.
And so I had the dream, woke up the next morning. I didn't remember the dream, but I was trying to figure out where the article was that I had read about a bass with sympathetic strings. And I was like, what's that article about? What is that? So like Bass Player magazine? Or I was just trying to think. So that was haunting me for a few days. There was no article. I was remembering this dream. And then 3 or 4 days later, I put the same CD in to listen to. And when I put the same CD in, started listening to music, the whole dream just downloaded. And I was like, oh, that was a dream. That was a dream. And so then I realized that I had dreamed of a bass with sympathetic strings. And then it took about 6 months for me to work through the inertia of thinking that I might want to do this, or I could do this. I wasn't an instrument maker. I was a musician.
Right.
And so then that process started sometime in 1993 or early 1994.
Did you tell your friends about what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I was really excited about it.
Okay. This show is about people who are pursuing their unique vision. So what happens when you...
Overcoming the string tension, he describes, was a remarkable feat, as the Bazantar's 38 strings together exert well over 1,000 pounds of tension on the instrument. As he mentioned in the interview, Mark Deutsch was greatly inspired by the sitar when creating the Bazantar. Next, we'll hear a track from Fool, a remarkable album by Mark Deutsch that features only those 2 instruments, Bazantar and sitar. Here's Chrysanthemums and Orchids by Mark Deutsch, here on TerraForte on KUPS Tacoma.
What you are about to hear is the Torre, a one-of-a-kind instrument developed by the Brazilian music group Ukari. The uniqueness of this instrument is what really caught my eye. The instrument consists of a large PVC pipe that rests vertically on a peg. Strings are stretched along the side of the instrument at different lengths, and then on top of the PVC pipe, there's a crank. Two people are needed to play the instrument. One player turns the crank, spinning the instrument about its axis. The second player, using a bow of horsehair, plays the strings as they whirl by. Since the bow is so large, it can play multiple strings, even chords. Changing the speed and quantity of strings being played creates a large amount of harmonic variation, and thus this instrument is often used as a harmonic bass. This instrument, I believe, would be loosely classified as a bowed zither. However, its construction and sound are so unique, I'm not totally sure. As this instrument is one of a kind, there aren't very many works where it is featured, so I've decided to play another piece by Uakti that showcases a few other interesting invented instruments. This piece was the result of a collaboration with composer Philip Glass and is titled Amazon River. hope you enjoyed a taste of some of Uakti's other wonderful instruments. Here's one more piece by Uakti that features the Torre. This piece is named Krishina. I hope you enjoy. You're listening to KUPS 90.1 FM, The Sound.
Access to water is in danger. 1 in 6 people don't have enough access to drinking water. That's more than 1 billion people who lack resources to cook, bathe, and drink. By 2025, that number will nearly triple. Despite this, corporations are accelerating efforts to turn water into a profit-driven commodity. As water becomes a private commodity, it ceases to become a right. Take the pledge to protect universal access to water at thinkoutside-the-bottle.org.
The next instrument I'm going to be playing for you is called the Yaybahar. For an acoustic instrument, the Yaybahar sounds a lot like a synthesizer. Invented by a Turkish musician, Gorkan Sen, the Yaybahar's construction is a little hard to describe. Imagine a Y made of wooden boards that is elevated at its base by a vertical board. There are 2 drum heads at the top of the Y with wires strung from them to the base. The top half of the vertical board also has strings. I'm guessing it's a little hard to imagine. Anyway, this instrument can be played in 3 different ways. You can play the string with a bow or pluck them. You can also strike the drum heads. Even if it's difficult to picture what this instrument looks like, I think you'll agree it sounds pretty cool. You're listening to KUPS 90.1 FM, The Sound. Now, I'm a big fan of the didgeridoo, so I'm excited to share these next instruments, as they are relatively new variations of the traditional didgeridoo. The first one that I'll mention is the slide didgeridoo. A 2-piece instrument, this didgeridoo works kind of like a trombone. You either slide the 2 pieces together or further apart in order to change the note being played. This allows for a greater range of pitch. Here's the slide didgeridoo. This next piece features a more rapid change of pitch and is a good example of how the slide didgeridoo can differ from its traditional counterpart. The next variation that I'll mention is even more uncommon than the slide didgeridoo, and is called the chromatic didgeridoo, or the new. Invented by Eric Nougat, the top half of this instrument looks like a bit like a saxophone with a didgeridoo mouthpiece, while the bottom looks like a bassoon. The idea behind the instrument is like the slide didgeridoo in that it attempts to give the didgeridoo a greater range of pitch. You're listening to KUPS 90.1 FM Tacoma. Here's the chromatic didgeridoo.
The glass harmonica is, in a certain sense, the most unusual instrument we've looked at so far. It doesn't use strings or reeds to produce its sound. It doesn't use moving air like a brass or woodwind instrument. It doesn't have keys like a piano. It's not a percussion instrument. Instead, the glass harmonica works in the same way as the popular party trick of moving a wet finger along the edge of a crystal wine glass to produce a high, ethereal tone. It was, in fact, this very trick that inspired the instrument's inventor, Benjamin Franklin. The glass harmonica is a very tricky thing to describe visually. Its main part is a slowly rotating rod 3 or 4 feet long, with a series of several dozen nested glass bowls attached to it, ranging from the largest and lowest pitch on the player's left to the smallest and highest on their right. In Benjamin Franklin's model, the rod was turned by a foot pedal, similar to the sewing machines of the time, and had 37 glass bowls. Modern harmonicas are often turned by a motor and can have many more bowls to extend their range. A few glass harmonicas from Benjamin Franklin's time actually still exist. For some reason, many people at the time held superstitions around the glass harmonica in the 18th and 19th centuries, believing that it caused physical or mental illness. Here's a quote from one music expert of the time. "The harmonica excessively stimulates the nerves, plunges the player into a nagging depression, and hence into a dark and melancholy mood that is apt method for slow self-annihilation. If you are suffering from any kind of nervous disorder, you should not play it. If you are not yet ill, you should not play it. If you are feeling melancholy, you should not play it." Fortunately, not everyone thought this way. Mozart, who actually lived at the same time as Benjamin Franklin, loved the sound of the glass harmonica so much he wrote a piece specifically for it. Here's Mozart's Adagio in C minor for glass harmonica, Koelschel number 617. Finally, here's a much more recent composition for the glass harmonica. This piece, composed by William Zeitler, was written and named for the last transit of Venus in 2012. Enjoy. For our final instrument today, we'll be discussing another instrument that was also recently invented, but is a little different.
Yeah, it goes by the name of cat organ, and it consists of,
I think it's like 20 like stuffed animal cats, like squeaky toys. So when you squeeze them, they meow a certain note.
I think the note changes depending on where the battery is in its lifespan.
Yeah, I don't know how they like change the note, but it's a series of about 20 of these cats and a guy like on a long table, and a guy's just standing there playing them.
Yes. So just as a disclaimer, no actual cats were harmed in the making of this song. These are all toy cats. I hope you enjoy. You've been listening to TerraForte on KUPS Tacoma. We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Like TerraForte on Facebook for updates on the show and to see pictures and videos of the instruments featured here.
Join us next week as we hear some more exciting and unusual instruments and interview one of UPS's very own music professors. Until then, keep on exploring.